Last time I interviewed this man, I believe, was after Game 4 of the 2000 World Series on the field at Shea Stadium.
Ew.
When I was covering the affair for ESPN Radio. And this man was on fire, absolutely on fire in that World Series. And the person in front of me who was interviewing him for ESPN at the time for TV, I remember Paul O'Neill instructing this person to, whatever you do, do not mention my stats, because he was on fire in that World Series. I believe he tripled in the game. He had 2 triples in that World Series. And he said, whatever you do, don't talk about my stats. And the reporter started the interview. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Paul O'Neill went 2 for 4 tonight. You're 6 for the last 9 of this World Series. And I remember the look he gave. He moved his head back, sort of like, are you effing kidding me? And then I'm next to interview him. Stage was set. And I just loved, as you know, I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I just loved, his acquisition to the Yankees, in a way, not only set things up because of his play and his demeanor in that locker room, but Roberto Kelly went to the Reds, and it opened up a position for Bernie Williams to be to this man's right for so many years, winning championships. And he's got a new book out to talk about his career called A Swing and a Hit, 9 Innings of What Baseball Taught Me. He is none other than Paul O'Neill. How you doing, Paul?
Rich, I'm doing well. I'm just going down memory lane here as I listen to you explain that in Shea Stadium. It was one of the best nights of our lives. It was wonderful.
It was. So I'm not talking about your stats here, Paul, right? Should I not talk about your stats? You're through that part of your career. Don't mention my stats.
Yeah, it's fine now. The stats are where they're going to be. We're not going to add to them at this point, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Were you superstitious about that sort of stuff when you played, Paul, your stats?
It got the wheels turning too much, and especially when the team just won a World Series. Who cares who did what, other than the Yankees beat the Mets, and that was a relief because Mr. Steinbrenner wanted nothing other than to beat the Mets.
That's true. In the World Series, talk about pressure, and I just remember that too. Is the Mets had already made the World Series by winning the NLCS, and then there was a big game against the Mariners in Yankee Stadium that was kind of fraught until David Justice hit a grand slam that night. I'll never forget that night, and it was just amazing. I'm wondering what do you think of when you remember your Yankee years, Paul O'Neill?
Well, immediately when you're traded from another team, it's kind of an unknown, and back then, there was no interleague play. So I didn't know what it was like to be a home player in New York and to be a Yankee and live in New York. And it didn't take long. I walked into the first day of spring training. I sat down, befriended Don Mattingly. We walked out on the field. I saw Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and Joe DiMaggio. I was like, I have gone somewhere different. Things have changed. It did not take long to realize the tradition and just the majesty of being part of the Yankees.
And so, what was Mattingly? That, by the way, that's my favorite baseball player of all time is Donald Arthur Mattingly, number 23 in your program. What did he teach you? What ropes did he show you when you first got to the Yankees?
First of all, just what it was to be a Yankee. Second, we worked a lot together in the cage. I had just come from Cincinnati where, they were trying to kind of force me to be a power hitter, and it just was not my natural swing. And, Donnie hit home runs and hit, a lot of RBIs, but, he wasn't a pull or all or nothing guy either. He hit in the high 300s at times. So we just had a lot in common about the way we hit. We had a lot in common about the same guys we would face as far as being left-handers in the lineup. And I just had a lot of fun with Don Mattingly. I grew up in the Midwest. He grew up in the Midwest. Our personalities were a lot the same. And, he, when I was traded to the Yankees, was the face of the Yankees. He was the guy going to the All-Star game every year as the New York Yankee.
And, when you got there, it wasn't that time yet. What was it like when you got to New York? Because you had a ring already from Cincinnati, Paul.
Yeah, we had won. And then, when you're traded from the Reds, it's kind of like, as a player in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I didn't do enough, or, I kind of let this team, this organization down. And Gene Michael was a brilliant guy at putting a team together, and he added a lot of parts and said and told me on a call that night that this team is going to turn around, and they had not won in a while. And it was just the perfect time to go there. We started winning. We got Mattingly to his first playoff in 1995, and then all of a sudden that core four, Derek Jeter, Posada, Pettit, and Mariano show up to an already pretty good team and made it a great team. And it's just looking back, it was just the perfect time to be there. It's just like everything they did as far as an organization seemed to be the right call.
So, Paul O'Neill here on the Rich Eisen Show, A Swing and a Hit, 9 Innings of What Baseball Taught Me, a new book, Memoir, out here, and we'll get to that book in a second. Who was the craziest nasty boy in Cincinnati? Which one was the craziest, Paul? Which one was it?
You can flip a coin on that one, but I tell you one thing, that when I look back at that, it really changed baseball in my mind, because you see the way baseball is played now with the bullpens, and that was really the way that team was set up back in 1990. I mean, going into the playoffs, you would look for your starter to go to 5 or 6 innings, and then Charlton, Dibble, and Myers would come in. But a lot of people don't realize, as good as they were, Rob Dibble for a couple years was the best I had ever seen in baseball. I mean, this guy was pinpoint control, wild delivery, threw 100, was fearless. I mean, those guys were part of something that was to come, and people emulate in baseball, putting bullpens like that together.
Did Lou ever really fight with these guys? What happened?
They had a little scrum in Dibble's locker one night.
What happened? I got to get that story, Paul.
Chris Sabo told me, "Come on out here. Lou and Dibble are going at it." So I come out to referee in a towel and shower shoes. But that happened. That wasn't made up.
Who won it? Who won that one? Did Dibble win that one?
I think when it was all said and done, they were both a little embarrassed at the time. But I think we were pulling. I mean, you got to figure Rob Dibble's in his prime. Lou Piniella is the manager. We were pulling Dibble off of Piniella. So usually, who's on top is winning the fight.
Could you imagine if something like that happened today, Paul? What would happen in our world?
No. Times have changed. I mean, we were going over things last night about, some of the old stories of Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, fighting fans and screaming stuff from the dugout. Times have changed. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb would have had a heck of a TikTok page, don't you think, Paul?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
I mean, that's just, and you're right, though, those Reds, to have the guys come out of the pen like that, and then having the arms like that. You're seeing that today, right, where everybody comes out throwing flames. But then you're also seeing somebody like you saw another advancement of it in front of you with the way the 96 team was put together, right, where Mendoza would give you an inning, and then Stanton might give you an inning, and Nelson might give you a couple of batters, and then you go to Mariano. Everyone forgets that Mariano was the setup guy for Wetland in that 96 year. And now that's what you're seeing. Yeah, I mean, the Yankees were one of the first teams. I know La Russa was doing a lot of it, too, with the White Sox and the A's and the lefty-righty stuff. But you see that back in that day, the starter had to go 5 innings. And the starter you could have been Cone or Key or, eventually Clemens. I mean, that was the way to win baseball games, in a way, Paul.
Yeah,
right?
Especially big games. I mean, you got into the World Series and the playoffs and things like that. And Joe Torre would go to Mariano for numerous innings. He'd go to him in the 8th and have him pitch 2 innings. So that's back again. You mentioned that you had great matchups with Nelson and Mendoza and Stanton being the lefty, where today, the rule of facing 3 batters, it's not nearly as much as matchups as it is just power pitchers out of the bullpens. And, you're seeing it in every organization, the elite organizations that have a chance to win have great bullpens.
Paul O'Neill here on the Rich Eisen Show. The reason why I'm sighing is, I'm just remembering baseball like that, right? I mean, one of the biggest hits I've ever seen in the playoffs was Girardi hitting that triple, right? Against Maddox in '96 in that 6th game of the World Series to actually win it. And I just think today that might have been caught by a 4th outfielder. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm serious. What do you think of the way the game is played today, Paul O'Neill? You see it every night on Yes. You know,
there are a lot of analytics, obviously, and I still am old school to the point where that's the generation I played in. But, you talk about Joe Girardi's hit. I was fortunate enough to be on base and actually felt Yankee Stadium ground shaking when I stepped on home plate. I mean, those are the things you'll never forget. But, I think they are going to address the shift next year. Do I think that hitters could learn to hit the other way? Absolutely. Do I think they want to? No, because there's so much into the home run and so much into, the launch angle and the things that, we didn't have to complicate hitting other than, putting your work in, seeing the baseball and hitting it. And, to me, the art of hitting is seeing adjustments. And, you see guys taking 3 of the biggest swings every at bat. Well, that's no adjustment. That's just hoping a pitcher makes a mistake. So, there are still great hitters in the game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when you look what Aaron Judge is doing this year, and you look at LeMahieu and Trout and guys like that know how to hit, they still put up unbelievable numbers. But there are guys out there that they call successful hitters that strike out 200 plus times and walk 100 times and hit 190. That you can get away with that now. And in the old days that you were sighing about, I mean, it was an embarrassment to strike out, and not so much anymore.
Yeah, no question about it. Paul O'Neill here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, what has 9 innings of baseball taught you, Paul?
That the game it never quits changing. No, I mean, there's so many parallels to sports and life, and the ups and downs. And Jack Curry, who wrote the book with me, I really trusted Jack. He was a beat writer in New York when I played, and works with me at Yes now doing the game. So when he came to me with this idea a few years ago, it interested me. Obviously, I'm not going to do a tell-all book and do anything about players, but the more Jack brought on stories and topics, they became stories and they became faces. And, that's what kind of drove me to do this, because, a lot of people don't even realize, I got called up in 1985. Pete Rose was my manager. Ted Kluszewski was my hitting coach. I mean, these names are from the past. And then all of a sudden, as the book goes on, you're talking about Derek Jeter and Don Mattingly, and it's a progression, and it's just what has happened in my life, and it's my theories. It's not a one size fits all. It's just the way I thought about the game and what I thought helped me be the best player.
And then what's the through line about being a champion baseball player on a champion baseball team? Obviously, did it once with the Reds, 4 times with the Yankees. What is the general? I know you said it's not one size fits all, and I'm kind of asking you now a follow-up a one size fits all question. But what is the through line? What it might be the similar or the parallels between those 5 championship teams that where people are looking for that secret sauce right now in 2022?
Well,
Paul?
I think that I think different teams are wired differently. I think we were wired from day one, knowing that a World Series was expected. It wasn't just have a good year. I mean, New York has bigger expectations than other cities, but the tradition and the love of the Yankees. I mean, I still remember to this day. The conversations in the delis and things like that were about the game the night before. It matters if the Yankees win or lose. It matters if the Mets win or lose in New York. I mean, that's the way the generations have grown up. And it's not a social event to go to the game in Yankee Stadium. I mean, who wins or loses, that matters. And that always, pours into the players. I love the intensity of New York. I thought it was the most fun place to play baseball. And you talk about the old stadium and the ghosts that were there, and you almost start to believe it yourself as a player, because so many crazy things happen during that run that we won games we shouldn't have won, and we had freak plays that we shouldn't have had. And you need great breaks. I don't care how good a team is to in professional sports to continually win. You need good things to happen, and we were very fortunate at that time. And like I said, we kind of took it for granted. But now when you look back and you see that it hasn't happened since, that, it was a very special time.
Well, I mean, there's also another moment in time, Paul, I want to hit on, and I know I've kept you for a bit, but I just want to have a few more minutes with you here. Paul O'Neill swinging a hit, 9 innings of what baseball taught me. a new memoir out from Paul. I'll never forget this because, again, your championship years coincided with the years that I was covering the World Series for ESPN Radio all those years ago when I had hair. But I'm also a native New Yorker, born in Brooklyn, raised in Staten Island. I'll never, ever forget Game 3 of the 2001 World Series when the series moves back to New York, and it was, in the aftermath of 9/11, and the president was throwing out the first pitch, and George Bush was there. And I just remember being on the field beforehand and seeing helicopters everywhere and snipers on the roof, and it was a fraught night for just covering it. What was it like playing in that game, Paul?
You know what? I look back at that time, and that's the one World Series that I don't think about the outcome. I think about those three games and what was happening in the world. And as a player, you think that what does baseball really mean to somebody that's just lost a loved one or something like that. But you saw what it meant. I mean, it brought joy to some people at a time, and those three games, obviously, historically, just the way they ended and the excitement and the part of it was unbelievable. I remember running sprints before the game, and Scott Brocious and I kind of just stopped and watched President Bush throw a strike in there, and we were so relieved once he was off the field because it was like we don't know what's happening in the world now, and those nights were very strange, and we've gone through something recently with the pandemic the past couple of years, so it's things go through sports, but I'll never forget that time in New York and what the people. How they backed the Yankees, and it was just like they needed something to get away from life at that point. And those three games, to me, were as important to New York as they were for us.
Well, and then the last one for you, Paul, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, that one time that you were asked to hit 2 home runs for a sick kid in the hospital.
Wasn't that terrible? I mean, an official scorer actually gave me a triple and an air when Kramer needed 2 home runs. I mean, come on. You've got to give me a break there. Right?
How was that put in front of you, the idea of being on Seinfeld and having that be your role on that show that time?
Well, again, I mean, these things only happen when you're part of the New York Yankees. I mean, that show, obviously, as great as it was, bits and pieces were around the Yankees. So I was asked to do the show. I didn't really know that much about it. We were out playing the California Angels. And then, obviously, I became a huge fan of the show when I saw the episode. But I remember getting in the car, going to the studio. I met Kramer, who I did the scene with, and he had come up to me and started talking to me, and I was kind of wondering, is this guy in character, or is this the way this guy really acts? It was him. And, we only shot it a couple of times and jumped back into the car, went back to the hotel, and played the Angels that night. That's what I remember that day. And then months later in the off season, watching the episode and how it came about and how it was put together. It's so funny to this day. I mean, you'll see couples out, and the guy will say, "Hey, I remember this hit, or I remember this thing," and his wife might say, "Hey, I remember the Seinfeld show." So, again, only happens when you're part of the New York Yankees.
Man, I got to tell you, I mean, you're much better than Tartable acting, Bernie. I mean, honestly, there are a handful of your teammates that went on. I think you did, you literally felt like that was the Paul O'Neill that I knew that I interviewed. Like two home runs? Like, what are you, crazy? You did a great job, Paul. You did a very good job.
Well, I appreciate that. Those are I see pictures of that every once in a while, and they're just great memories. And basically, that's what you got left from the game and how long you were in it.
Well, thanks for the time, Paul. I really appreciate it. I could literally go on and on and on because those times meant a lot to me professionally and also personally when you were winning with the Yankees. And I think you do a great job. UK and Cone together are one of the best listens on television. My kids and I watch it all the time out here on the West Coast. And I couldn't be happier for you to get your number retired and be in Monument Park, man. That is huge. Congrats on that in advance.
Well, I really appreciate it. Obviously, the biggest personal honor that has ever been given to me in sports, and the Yankees a couple months ago told me that. So I know. I get a little stage fright knowing that you and your kids are on the couch listening. I'm going to have to shape up a little bit.
Yeah, and Kay said he would put aside a couple of those Yoda bobblehead dolls for me. And by the way, I'm not kidding. That's coming up on the Yoda bobblehead night. So make sure you remind him of that next time, okay?
I will do that. You have my word.
And look for my call. I'd love to have you back on closer to your number retirement and talk some baseball because the Yanks are killing it right now, and it's been fun to watch. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Rich, have a great day, man. Nice talking to you.
You too. There's Paul O'Neill right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.